It didn't begin with the crash of a collapsing world but with a quiet, almost mechanical click. At 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, his smartphone screen lit up with a notification. A message from Megan: "Hey babe, I'll be really late tonight. All hands on deck, trying to hit the quarterly deadline. Don't wait up." At that moment, he was lying on the couch, immersed in a book, a fast-paced techno-thriller, a world clear and logical, unlike the chaos brewing in his own life. His reply was just as simple and unsuspecting: "No problem, work hard." On the outside, absolute calm. Inside, something barely noticeable, a familiar crack in the seemingly perfect picture, something he recognized from his work. Not a lie, no. But not the whole truth either. A half-truth, which for a man in his profession is often worse than an outright deception. He pushed the feeling aside and returned to his book, where evil was clearly defined and ultimately punished. An hour later, lying in bed and mindlessly scrolling through Instagram before sleep, he stumbled upon it. It wasn't a post from Megan. Her feed in recent weeks had been filled with cats and inspiring quotes. No, it was a post from Kevin, a junior marketer in her department, a guy with a perpetually enthusiastic face and a chronic inability to filter what he shared with the world. The post was a classic post-battle report, a blurry, hastily taken photo of about 10 people squeezed into a narrow booth at a trendy downtown bar. Smiles were too wide, eyes sparkling from cocktails and adrenaline after a, supposedly, tough day. The caption read, "Deadline crushed. Team celebration. Partying face." And there, right in the middle of the fun, was her. Megan. Her head thrown back in carefree laughter, a martini glass in one hand, and with the other, her other hand resting on the shoulder of the man whose lap she was sitting on. That was Alex Vance, her boss, senior manager. His right arm was tightly wrapped around her waist, and his hand rested too high on her ribs, in a place not usually touched in a simple friendly hug. Their poses were not those of colleagues caught off guard by a flash. They looked cozy, familiar, as if their bodies knew this dance before that night. He stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity. 60 seconds that rewrote his reality. But strangely, his heart didn't race in panic, his stomach didn't drop into icy emptiness. Instead, he was seized by a strange, almost sacred calm. The same feeling that arises after months of painstaking, exhausting work when you finally find that one piece of evidence, the only undeniable one. The one that turns guesses into proof and suspicions into a charge. The vague shadows he had noticed over the past months, late Uber rides home charged to Alex's corporate card, business dinners in overly cozy restaurants, suddenly came together into a clear, irrefutable picture. And this picture had a timestamp and geolocation. He didn't let anger take over. He didn't throw his phone against the wall. His fingers were cold and steady. He pressed his thumb against the screen, held it, and in the quiet silence of the bedroom came an almost inaudible click, the image saved to the gallery. Then he opened his secure cloud storage and uploaded it there. After that, he connected an encrypted external hard drive to his phone and made another copy. In his world, evidence was everything. And it always needed to be protected, duplicated, and stored in inaccessible places. While Megan laughed carelessly in the bar, thinking she was just taking part in an innocent celebration, she was actually the main subject of an unfolding internal investigation. And her fiancé, her boring compliance director, was preparing to become the most methodical, ruthless, and meticulous investigator she'd ever faced. He got up from the bed and went to his home office, a sanctuary of order and procedures. The soft light of the desk lamp illuminated the sterile order on the table. He turned on his computer, and within moments his fingers were flying over the keyboard, creating a new encrypted folder on the server. He named it without emotion, as he had named thousands of other cases, Case M. Jenkins, Vance. Then he created a new anonymous email address, a digital ghost, unlinked to him or his company. From that address, he began drafting a formal complaint to the ethics committee. It wasn't an angry denunciation but a legal masterpiece. Cold, professional, and devastatingly precise. He cited specific sections of the corporate code of conduct they had violated: prohibition on fraternization between supervisors and subordinates, conflict of interest, unprofessional conduct damaging the company's reputation. As a final, crushing blow, he added misuse of company resources, reasonably assuming that this party would end up on Alex's expense report. He attached the photo. The caption beneath was succinct, Exhibit A. The cursor hovered over the send button. He selected the sole recipient, the head of HR, a woman whose job was to take these matters more seriously than anyone else. His finger pressed the button. The investigation began. The next few days became a masterpiece of strategic theater for the narrator. His life transformed into a perfectly rehearsed play, where he performed the role of the carefree, unsuspecting fiancé with Oscar-worthy skill. Megan would come home at dawn, smelling of alcohol and someone else's perfume. She tiptoed into the bedroom, thinking he was asleep. But he lay there with his eyes closed while his mind stayed wide awake, working with cold, mechanical precision, calculating the next 20 moves like a complex chess game. He analyzed every phrase she uttered, every breath she took, building a behavioral model he could later use against her. In the mornings, she was slightly hungover but maintained her usual cheerful facade. "God, last night was insane," she declared, pouring herself coffee. "We were at the office until midnight. Alex is just a relentless taskmaster." He simply nodded, his face a mask of gentle, wifely sympathy. "Sounds tough," he said in deceptively calm tones. "Make sure he gives you a good lunch for all those overtime hours." This was the essence of his strategy: absolute, unshakable normality. An investigator is most effective when the subjects under surveillance don't suspect they're being watched. He needed her to keep operating in her usual mode. He needed her to keep making mistakes, feeling completely safe. The HR department at their company was a well-oiled and ruthless machine. He knew his anonymous complaint, backed with clear photographic evidence, would trigger an immediate, high-priority investigation. His work in compliance gave him a unique level of access and understanding of internal processes. He didn't work directly with HR on such matters to avoid conflicts of interest, but he knew their methods down to the last detail. He knew they would start with quiet data gathering, emails, instant message logs, expense reports, corporate travel records, even office access control system data. They would build the case carefully before asking the first question. And he knew they would find more. Because for the last 6 months, he himself had unwittingly been a witness to a pattern of behavior that was, at best, deeply unprofessional. He had seen late Uber rides from work to her old apartment, before she moved in with him, paid for on Alex's corporate card. He had seen bills for dinners at restaurants too romantic for a boss and subordinate business meal. Once, when he used her laptop to print something, he had glimpsed instant message lines from Alex so inappropriate they would make even a seasoned sailor blush. At the time, he hadn't saved them, considering it an invasion of privacy. Now, he realized that had been a strategic mistake, one he intended to correct. His new role was to become a second anonymous source. He would feed the HR investigation with the evidence they were looking for but never reveal his identity. He became the shadow curator of their own downfall. During weekend getaways, while Megan was off at brunch with her equally frivolous friends, he began the second phase of his plan. He entered their home office and turned on her personal laptop, which she had carelessly never password protected. It took less than 10 minutes to find what he was looking for. The chat logs with Alex were all there, a real treasure trove of compromising material. It wasn't just flirtatious comments and inside jokes. The most damaging were a series of conversations where Alex directly promised her a promotion she wasn't qualified for, in exchange for her loyalty and special support. It was a classic quid pro quo. He didn't save the files directly, that could leave a digital trace. Instead, he took a series of high-quality photos of the screen with his phone. The images were clean, undeniable evidence. He also sifted through the shared photo album in their cloud storage. In a folder she thought he never looked at, he found other pictures from corporate events. Shots where she and Alex always stood a little too close, looked at each other a little too long. He saved them all. He compiled this new collection of evidence into a second dossier. He sent it from another anonymous email address, this time directly to the lead HR investigator assigned to the case. The message was brief: "I am a colleague of Megan Jenkins. I know there's an ongoing investigation. This might be helpful. I want to remain anonymous out of fear of retaliation. The trap was no longer just set, it was lavishly baited with a feast of undeniable proof. Megan and Alex thought they were dealing with one blurry photo, a ridiculous coincidence. They had no idea that a whole archive cabinet of documents, methodically collected by someone they considered an ally, was about to crash down on them. The first signs that the investigation had reached a new level appeared the following Tuesday. Megan came home from work pale and anxious. "The strangest thing happened today," she said, pouring herself a very large glass of wine. "HR called me in for a meeting. And Alex, separately. They asked tons of weird questions about our work relationship, about after-hours events, expense reports. It was so tense." He put on the mask of the concerned fiancée. "That really sounds strange," he said with perfectly fake sympathy. "And what do you think it's about?" "No idea," she lied, her eyes darting away from his gaze. "Alex thinks someone might have a personal grudge against him and they're trying to frame him. We both just told them we have a great professional relationship. It's all one big misunderstanding." He just nodded, sipping his tea. "I'm sure that's exactly what it is," he said with icy calm. In his mind, he checked off a new, deadly violation, lying during an official HR investigation. That alone was enough grounds for termination. He watched as the puzzle came together into a perfect, destructive picture, beautiful in its relentless logic. She didn't realize she was confessing to her own career suicide to the very person who orchestrated it. She thought he was her safe harbor. She didn't know he was the one who launched the torpedo, now coldly watching her head toward its target. The final act of this drama did not unfold with thunder and fury, but with the quiet, relentless grinding of corporate gears devouring lives. The week following the first HR question, witnesses turned into a mesmerizing spectacle for the narrator, watching a slow but inevitable collapse, like a sinking ship whose crew desperately tries to bail water with a sieve. Megan and Alex made the gravest mistake possible in a corporate investigation: they lied. And they lied about the same things. Their statements under oath were now on record. They stood on the deck with blindfolds on, holding hands, unaware that he already had his hand on the lever. The HR investigator, a sharp-tongued, no-nonsense woman named Linda, now had their official statements. Statements claiming they had strictly professional relationships. Statements that he, the narrator, knew would be systematically dismantled using the evidence he had provided. The next move in this corporate play would be a forensic audit of their accounts. And here his expertise played the key role. He knew exactly what Linda would look for, and decided to help her find it in the most efficient way. On Wednesday, he sent the third, final anonymous letter. This time, more technical. In it, he flagged specific dates and particular expense reports submitted by Alex. He highlighted a dinner on a day when he knew Megan and her family had a personal event, meaning Alex's team dinner was really a dinner for two. He noted a hotel bill from a business trip to a city where the company had no clients, a trip he knew Megan happened to attend on a girls' weekend with friends. It was a precision strike aimed to kill. He gave the investigation a perfect map of their deception. Now it wasn't just about flirtatious chat or one unfortunate photo. Now it was a clear scheme of using company funds to finance their personal affair. Fraud. Abuse of trust. Megan's tension that week was a spectacle he watched with near aesthetic pleasure. She was nervous, irritable, perpetually glued to her phone, messaging Alex. They tried patching holes in their story, adjusting details, stuffing leaks in the ship's hull already half submerged. She had the audacity to complain to him about stress. "All this HR stuff is a nightmare," she said one evening. "It's distracting me. I can't focus on work. And Alex is acting so weird over this." He watched her without blinking. "You just need to tell the truth," he said with murderous calm. "As long as you're honest, you have nothing to fear. That's what I always teach in my compliance trainings." The brief panic flickering in her eyes was priceless. It was like a short circuit in an impeccably calibrated system of lies. The hammer fell on Friday. It was a beautiful, sunny day. He was in his office, reviewing a new version of the anti-corruption policy, when an all-company email arrived. A faceless corporate announcement from the head of marketing, We announce that Alex Vance has left the company effective immediately. We wish him success in his future endeavors. He had been fired. No ceremonies. No applause. The phrase, "we wish him success in his future endeavors," a corporate euphemism meaning, he was terminated for cause, and we legally cannot share the sordid details. He knew Megan's fate would be handled separately. He went home, poured himself a whiskey on the rocks, and waited. 2 hours later she walked through the door. Her face was ashen, eyes tear-stained and empty. She clutched a small cardboard box containing the meager remaining items from her desk, a mug, a few pens, a novelty toy. She said nothing. She simply walked over and collapsed onto the couch, staring ahead at nothing. "Rough day?" he asked, voice dripping with sweet poison, feigned sympathy. She finally looked at him. "They fired Alex," she whispered. Her voice broke. "They called me in right after. They showed me everything. The photos, the messages, the expense reports, that hotel bill." She began to cry, quietly, hopelessly. "They know we lied. They placed me on leave without pay. Final termination." He allowed the heavy, ringing silence to hang in the air. He let her sit in the wreckage of her own life, feel the full weight of the fall. Then he rose, walked to the coffee table, and placed a single printed photograph face up. The one image that had started it all. Her on Alex's lap. Her head snapped up. She stared at the photo, then at him. And in her eyes, he saw the last, horrifying puzzle pieces click into place. The realization was physically painful. That was you," she gasped, voice hoarse with disbelief. "The anonymous complaint. It was you." He said nothing. He simply took a slow sip of whiskey, savoring the moment. His vengeance was never meant to be loud. It had to be undeniably correct. "Why?" she screamed, tears running down her face. "Why did you do this? Why did you destroy me?" He finally sat in the chair opposite her, adopting the posture he used in disciplinary hearings. "Let me explain this in terms you might understand," he began, his voice cold and even as steel. "You and I both work in a company governed by a code of conduct. A set of rules we all agree to abide by. It is the foundation of our professional lives. It's what ensures a safe, fair, ethical workspace." He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "You didn't just cheat on me, Megan. You violated corporate policy. You entered into an inappropriate relationship with your direct supervisor. You participated in a scheme to defraud the company by manipulating expense reports. And when questioned by HR in a formal investigation, you lied. You committed perjury." She stared at him, stunned. She had never considered her personal betrayal in professional terms. To her, these were two separate worlds. "I am the Senior Director of Corporate Ethics and Compliance," he continued. "My entire work, my entire professional identity is built upon upholding these rules. The rules you so recklessly and repeatedly violated. You complained that my job was boring, that I was inflexible. But it is that inflexibility, that absolute adherence to rules, that prevents our company from collapsing. That is what I believe in." He pointed to the photograph on the table. "When I saw this photo, I did not just see my fiancée kneeling before another man. I saw a clear and immediate threat to the integrity of the system I swore to protect. I saw a compliance failure. And I did my job. I reported it as any employee is obligated to do. You destroyed my life over a set of rules," she sobbed. "No," he replied coldly, rising. "You destroyed your own life because you lacked integrity. You thought you could live in a world without rules or consequences. You thought you could lean on my steady shoulder at home while breaking rules at work. You failed to see that for someone like me, those are one and the same. My personal life and professional life obey the same code. You broke both. The consequences are simply the system correcting itself." He walked over to the front door and opened it. The evening air drifted into the room. "Your employment with the company is terminated. Our engagement is broken off. Your stay in my house is over. I have packed a suitcase for you with enough clothes for a few days. It's by the door. The rest of your belongings will be professionally packed and sent to your parents by week's end. Where am I supposed to go? She sobbed. He looked at her with no trace of empathy. That's a logistical problem outside of my department's scope. He spoke it with dead seriousness, as though reprimanding a subordinate. Goodbye, Megan. He walked out and went for a long walk. When he returned 2 hours later, she and the suitcase were gone. Epilogue. A month passed. The company officially processed her termination. Rumor had it that Alex was blacklisted in their industry. The story of his dismissal for a relationship with a subordinate and falsified expense reports spread like wildfire. Megan, as he had predicted, had to move in with her parents. Her tech career was over. She had no money, no job, and her reputation lay in ruins. His revenge was not a crime of passion. It was a compliance audit. He took her blatant neglect of the rules in their relationship and applied them to the cold, hard, unyielding rules of the world she thought she could conquer. Her life was put to the test. And she failed spectacularly. She thought she was playing a game. She never realized he was the one who'd written the rules.